Hey everyone, it's Lawrence here from Studio Hawk, and today I'm going to be breaking down the helpful content update. Yes, this is a big deal in the SEO community. If you scroll through Twitter right now, there is a lot of chatter about the helpful content update. Websites are being impacted positively, negatively, and today I'm going to break down the impacts of the helpful content update, what my thoughts are, and some ways to deal with it if you're being impacted by it right now. So in September, Google announced that it will be completing its rollout of the helpful content update. And throughout that time, boom, all the chatter went, all the noise went off. People were saying, hey, my website is being severely impacted. I'm seeing huge traffic drops. Scrolling through Twitter, social media, looking at all what the pundits are saying, there's some salty stories out there. People aren't happy about it. And I think one of the reasons why is because if you look through Google's guidelines on the helpful content update, they used to say, create helpful content for people, by people. They've flipped that statement a little bit around, and people have pointed this out that now it's helpful content for people. They've omitted the part of people having to create this content. Why? It's the introduction of AI content, right? People are using these tools to a really great effect to produce a lot of volume of content, and now there's a big shape up in the SERPs. So it's interesting to see how this has played out, especially with such a key update that Google have focused on for the last few months. Now, to denote some of the case studies or stories, this is still quite recent. So some of the stories that are coming out is a website owner, maybe a travel blogger, will have a website that has 80% of its traffic coming through organic. Suddenly, all their articles are now being dropped to the bottom of the search results and being overtaken by AI content or forum posts. And you can imagine how that feels if you created really long form and beautiful content and now are being devalued and outranked by AI content. So this is completely contradictory. So of course, John Mueller from Google has been addressing some of these contradictory terms, saying, hey, we're creating helpful content, but now AI generated content seems to be outranking us. What's going on there? There's still an advocacy that overall the helpful content update will be something helpful for users at the end of the day, but it's really early to say. If you're seeing large traffic drops, this is a classic situation where an update has happened, it's shaken things up, and a lot of these SEO tools that are indicating where you're positioned might be thrown off by such a huge, enormous change to their search algorithm. Now, seeing such major things happen to search results, one can only think of major updates that have happened in the past as well, like Penguin. Now, speaking of Penguin, and also thinking about maybe what Google's up to is, there was a recent talk at PubCon where it was mentioned that links is no longer a top ranking factor, which is a pretty interesting comment to hear from representatives of Google. Now, when we start thinking about what Google's up to is they've advocated that helpful content is the thing to go after, but what's happening with links? To me, links seem pretty damn important because overall, I've never seen a website rank really, really well without some sort of link acquisition to that website. You can have the best content in the world, but if it's not externally cited, how's Google going to crawl and find it, or at least deem it's credible? So I think there's a little bit of things at play here. And we've also heard from Google before that they love things like digital PR. They love really high tier link acquisition. So when they say things like, well, helpful content is here, we have AI content that's outranking really great long form content, but also links aren't important, I think there's a bit of Fugazio going on over here. There's a bit of miasma happening. All we can really do is look back to the search results and see what's going on. So there you have it. A little bit of theory crafting about the helpful content update, what's going on with links, but Lawrence, give me something practical, give me something actionable here. My website is literally dying right now. What can I do? Well, if you're seeing heavy traffic losses or heavy keyword ranking losses and your website is really built up around organic traffic, it is time to go into action mode. What I'd really recommend in that case is starting off with a deep dive technical audit and combing through and finding anything in Google Search Console, Screaming Frog to identify and just clear off the list. You don't want that hanging around long term because you might not be affected by the helpful content update, but because of these rollouts happening, it may have triggered something, and I see this happen a bit, it may have triggered something in Google to start recrawling your website a little bit more stringently. So doing a deep dive technical audit and then addressing it on page is probably the way to go. Now, if you're a website that's still growing in terms of its content, you've got some really good keyword positioning, but it's not a substantial traffic driver, I would advocate do a technical audit, but look at some of those on-page tweaks to see how it affects your positioning. This is where you can get really clever and start doing some A/B testing on changing title tags or adding in different parts of content. And then going back to those SERPs, going back to what is actually ranking quite well and seeing what features and functions they have that you're missing out on. If they have a video, maybe it's time to put a video on your website. If they have a testimonial, or they have a case study, or they have an expert commentary, it may be time to add those functions in. What do you have to lose if you're not ranking really well already? All those little functions and features, it can be a great way to address and actually leverage this update to your advantage. Now lastly, I've said this a few times, but giving it time is one of the best courses of action. I've been only SEO for about 5 years now, working directly with clients and seeing what impact these systems or updates have to websites. And usually if you're doing the right thing and you're getting all the fundamentals right, you'll win out over time, and these slight fluctuations are only a blip in the radar. So panic time, yes, for some websites, wait and see for others, of course, but just staying diligent. Having an SEO strategy, at least as a framework, is probably your best way forward as well. If you don't have one and suddenly this has popped up in your newsfeed saying, hey, by the way, you've lost all your traffic and rankings, it's probably time to start thinking about involving an SEO strategy, an SEO specialist, consultant into your website. So there we have it. That's the helpful content update breakdown, and we'll see you in the next one.